This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today I will be welcoming April Clemmer. She is an old Hollywood historian. She's got her own tour that she does both in person and virtually called the Old Hollywood Walking Tour. Sorry, I've been drinking too much coffee and I've got the jitters right now. And she loves Mae West, and I heard her on the Front Row Classics podcast. It turns out we know a lot of the same people who have been on here to talk old Hollywood, and we're going to deep dive on the life and career of Mae West, and I cannot wait. I've always wanted to do a deep dive on Mae West, but I haven't found anybody to do it with, but now we are going to do it today. You know, if you don't know who Mae West was, she lived from 1893 to 1980. She was the queen of body. She had a body sense of humor, and she was sexy, and she sang, and she acted. You know, she starred with Cary Grant, and She Done Him Wrong, and I'm No Angel, and My Chickadee with W.C. Fields. I interviewed his grandson. He told me a funny story, which I'm going to repeat today. She was in Myra Breckenridge. That was like her comeback movie. She did a movie version of her controversial Broadway play, Sex, called Sextet. She was on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. I mean, she was amazing. And me and April, we're going to deep dive her life and career today. So yeah, here is my interview with April Clemmer. Hey April, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I am great. How are you?
I am fabulous. I can't tell you what a great honor this is. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course. I'm really excited to have a little chat about May.
Awesome. So, before we get into May, let's start with your background. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Lincolnton, Georgia, which is a little small town close to Augusta.
Nice, nice. I heard you say on the Front Row Classics that you wanted to be an actress originally, early on.
Yes, that's actually why I moved to Los Angeles, and that's sort of why I really got into classic movies because I wanted to be an actress and be successful, and I felt like, they have all these books about how to go about an acting career,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought if those were true, then everyone would be famous, right? So I started just reading biographies of big stars, and I started with your gateway drugs, so to speak. So like
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, and then I just soon got into the more obscure actors and actresses, the ones that not everybody knows, and I learned so much about Hollywood, and it just kind of became a little passion for me.
Yeah, yeah. And I was brought up not to ask a lady how old she is, but for generational context, I'm 41. Are you around the same age?
Yes.
Okay, because when I was five, TNT was first launched. Me and my Italian grandmother used to watch classic black and white movies. She would tell me about the movie stars of her youth, and she'd take me to the library, and I would get biographies about them. And when we first got Cinemax, they would show black and white movies until they stopped. Then I was sad that they stopped. And then AMC came along, and then by 96 or 97, AMC started showing more modern films, and it's just not the same anymore. But that's my early
Yeah.
old Hollywood viewing.
Yeah, it's so interesting how people get into it in all different kinds of ways. I hear people sometimes say, "Oh, younger people don't care," and I think they do. I actually gave a tour to someone who dragged her parents to Hollywood for her 16th birthday,
Wow.
and her favorite star was Cary Grant, and
Hmm.
she wanted to do a tour of Hollywood for her birthday. So you have people like that grow up with it, and then you have people that stumble into it a little bit later in life, like I did.
Well, I think there's a small esoteric group of people younger that you just alluded to, but I just think a lot of the younger generations just don't care because we didn't grow up with internet. We were like we met it halfway. So they just
Yeah.
it's not the same for them. What was the first old Hollywood movie you saw that impacted you as a child?
Gone with the Wind.
Nice. Mine was The Wizard of Oz. I saw that.
Oh, same year.
Okay, so you saw both back to back, Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, yeah. But Gone with the Wind was more my big old Hollywood movie that I've loved my whole life.
I've only seen it in clips. I'm gonna make time to watch it soon because I feel like I'm ready. My dad told me when I was 20, wait till you're 30 to watch it. Now that I'm 41, I'm ready. I
It's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, God, it's iconic. I know I'm gonna love it. I know it's gonna be great. So you moved out to Los Angeles and you started the old Hollywood walking tour.
I did. I got here and I didn't really know anyone very
Mhm.
well, and being brand new, I wasn't super busy, so I had a list of addresses of all of these different places in Hollywood that I had read about in my biographies.
Mhm.
And so I would just go out and visit them and post it on Instagram, and people just kind of got to know me as someone who really had a passion for classic Hollywood. And I was asked to do a research project that then turned into what the Old Hollywood Walking Tour is today.
And you eventually found great people that we both know, like Kari Bible and like Scott Michaels and people
Oh
like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You find each other, and this is a small world.
yeah. So how long has it been going on now?
I started it in 2017, or I gave the first tour in 2017. I think I started writing it in 2015,
Nice,
or
nice.
maybe 2016, sometime around there.
And it keeps growing. It keeps getting bigger. You got so many people who are interested in seeing old Hollywood in L.A.
Yeah, I kind of adjusted it after the pandemic. I couldn't give the tour, so I started to do virtual programs.
Hmm.
And so I got to cover a lot more Hollywood history than just places I could walk to in Hollywood. So I have a community online. And then when COVID, ended, it was gradual. And I never went back to doing regular tours. People just started calling me and asking for the tour. So now I do all private tours except
Hmm.
for during the TCM Film Festival, and then I will do some public ones because there's so many people in town.
Hmm.
But it's really a nice experience. People can come to Hollywood. It's their own group, and we can really get into whatever they are interested in. So,
Right.
maybe I have somebody that's more into the 20s or the 30s, or somebody very into film noir. I can kind of focus more on those things during the tour. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So when did your interest in Mae West begin?
Um, I She was somebody that I always wanted to read about. The first book I read about her was this lady, written by this lady named, I believe her name is Charlotte Chandler, who just kind of transcribed her interview.
Uh huh.
So it's fascinating. And recently, I came across a copy of Mae West's autobiography, which is great. I mean, you can just hear her voice
Yeah.
through the pages. I got that at the Larry Edmonds bookshop
Yeah.
in Hollywood, which everybody should go visit if they haven't the next time they're in town. And it's called Goodness Had Nothing to Do with It.
Hmm.
But um, I was telling you, I liked to go to these places that I read about. And around the time that I was giving the tour, I went to the Ravenswood apartments where May lived most of her life. She moved there when she came to Hollywood to make films, and she did own other houses in other areas, but she always lived in her apartment in the Ravenswood. And so I didn't get to see the actual apartment, but I did call them up and
Hmm.
say I was looking for an apartment and got to see a few of the ones inside. So I got to be in the building.
Nice. Yeah, I was probably around 10 years old when May came on my radar. I just found out about My Little Chickadee with her and W.C. Fields, and I've
Hmm.
always tried to model my body sense of humor off of her in every situation and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I've loved her ever since. So I read that she was born and delivered by her aunt in her aunt's apartment. That was like at a time when babies were born at home, and that was that was like the Victorian era. So is that true?
Um, I know she was born at home. Um, I don't know that story, but it
Hmm.
might just. Okay, so there's people like Eddie Muller that can just pull things out of the filing cabinet of their mind at any point,
Hmm.
and I'm not really like that. I know it, but I'm like, oh, I have to double check. But she was born at home. I believe she was born in 1893, and so she did kind of have
Right.
this sort of Victorian esque, childhood. Her mother had been a corset model,
Huh.
and they were always very well dressed. They would get dressed to go out and promenade around. They lived in a nice area in New York, and so she had a really nice upbringing. And I think in her book she talks about how exciting it was when the 20s came around,
Hmm.
because she said you could just feel the energy of people having all this optimism and hope, and the world was changing and times were changing, but that it was a very optimistic, exciting time. And I think she carried that energy with her throughout her life.
Interesting, interesting. I would have never thought that about the 20s with the depression setting in and everything. You
Yeah,
know,
the end of the 20s weren't so great, but at the beginning it was good.
my grandmother was born in 1920, so she got to live through that. I think
Oh,
it affected her greatly. So, like, was she raised Catholic? Because I know that she started performing in church and then eventually competed in local talent shows.
she never really, I don't think, had an affiliation with any specific religion, although she was very spiritual. Um, she actually, in the Ravens, she grew up and she competed in all these talent shows and different things. And later, when she came to Hollywood, at the Ravenswood apartment, she would have these seances
Mm-hmm.
in her. There's a room you can actually, if you ever get to go in the building, you walk in and it's to the left, and it was a room she would rent out and invite people. And she talked about the spirits, so she believed in the spiritual realm, but I don't think that she was very religious in any specific way.
Her family had to have been Catholic because we Catholics we're dirty dogs. I'll tell you.
Yeah, and her dad was a prize fighter,
Hmm.
so.
Yeah. Now, she was born Mary Jane West, but she went by many other names early on in her performing. She was Baby May at one point. Then she was Jane Mast. Was May like a nickname for her?
No, that was her given name, but it was spelled May, like the month.
Okay.
And she changed it herself to Mae. She put the E in on the end instead of the Y because she said she didn't like things drooping and hanging down. So she
Yeah.
didn't like that letter Y.
Yeah. And then she was like impersonating men early on. She was like way ahead of her time.
Yeah, yeah, and also part of that I think was her being young, because when you're a kid you can kind of pull off,
Yeah.
and sometimes they need, just a kid. You can kind of be whatever until you start to fill out and become very obviously one way or the other.
Yeah, but she never identified as a serious like feminist, but yet she was competing with men in those days.
Oh, definitely. I think I was reading the other night about, her lively dating life,
Hmm.
and how she said, I didn't feel like men should get to have all the fun.
Yeah.
And she never really subscribed to, this that traditional image of a woman. And I think it was very shocking to the men that she dated,
Yeah.
because she wouldn't really fit in that box. Once they dated her, they wanted, they expected her to be like other girls and just, you know, they could go out and do whatever they wanted. But, if she was seeing this man, she should stay home, and if she wasn't out with him, she shouldn't be out with anyone. And she didn't like that at all. So she would just go out and do whatever she wanted and have, 5 or 6 boyfriends, And I think dating was very different than it is today, honestly. I
Of
think people
course.
take dating so seriously
Yeah.
now. And it used to just be like you could kind of go out with whoever you wanted unless you were engaged.
Yeah, and it wasn't so hung up on the status quo like it is now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was encouraged, on a certain level. But she said, men would try to put me in this box, and when they would find out I wasn't just going to, you know, give in to what they wanted. She said they didn't like it, but they never left me.
Yeah,
So often her problem would be how to get rid of somebody she was, where it had run its course.
and this brings me to my next question. I mean, like, she became famous for having this high sex drive, and it completely drove her persona and stuff. Do you think that it stemmed from that dating stuff you just alluded to, or do you think that maybe she grew up with some sexual abuse, and that's why she was like that?
I don't, so I don't see any evidence of any kind of abuse in her, anything I've read
Mm-hmm.
about her, anything that she said, because she talks about how happy she was. And she talks about how her mother really understood her. She had this very special relationship with her mother, and her mother, treated her very differently than the other children. She said, my mom understood me. She knew how to handle me, and what from the way I read it, they sort of let her do whatever she wanted to within reason,
Mm-hmm.
but she wasn't a brat.
Uh,
She was just like this kind of very mature child that what's very striking to me about her, she seems to know very early what she wants in any situation in life. And so her mother kind of ran with that. She said that, she talks about having a good relationship with her parents. I think her mother was just very forward thinking in the way that she raised May.
mm-hmm.
And I think being treated almost like a mini adult, but not having the expectations of an adult placed on her,
Yeah.
very young. I think that just made her grow up in this sort of world where she wasn't being told that she had to go along with other people's rules.
Mm-hmm.
That, she wasn't being drilled in this is right or this is wrong. It
Right.
was very much like if she wants this and there's no logical reason why she shouldn't be able to do it, then she
Right.
would get it. She tells the story about wanting a certain doll in a store.
Right.
And it was a store full of dolls. And so the doll she picked out is on the very high shelf. No one can reach it. They have to go get somebody from the back. They have to bring a ladder. They have to climb up there and see which one. And her mom kept trying to say, oh, do you want this doll? Do you want this doll? And she was like, no, I want that one. And
Mm-hmm.
she said later, my mom asked me about it, and I told her I loved the color of that doll's dress. And there was a reason I wanted that doll, and that is what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And but like most parents would have been like, oh my gosh, like no, like pick one of these. But her mom was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's what she wants. So she just strikes me as kind of being an old soul, being very mature from the time that she
Yeah.
was very young.
Yeah, because I'm very open about this. I come from a family of sex addiction, and I believe that certain people, they can grow up to be their own person and not be their parents, but then sometimes, just without even intending to, they do become their own parents. And I think that the latter falls in my category. I have no memory of ever having any kind of sexual abuse growing up, though I do know that my parents and other family members did. And so that's why I had to
Mm-hmm.
ask, because I just think it's very interesting. I mean, my sense of humor is definitely a manifestation of where I come from. You know, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I've talked to this one historian who's been on here several times, April Vevey, who writes about blonde bombshells from Hollywood, and we both talked about Jane Mansfield. Jane Mansfield was probably in nowadays terms a nymphomaniac. You know,
Uh-huh.
she had a high sex drive.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Mae West, I think she had really sharp instincts. I think she developed a certain style early on that
Hmm.
suited her, and she developed this character. And she sort of just instinctually knew it was going to work for her and her audience, and she played all of that up very
Hmm.
much. So I don't even, and because I've also read her
Hmm.
talking about sex energy and creative energy being the same thing, and insinuating that when she would be in a very creative period, like when she wrote her play Sex, she actually wasn't having sex at that point because she
Uh-huh.
wanted to save all that energy for what she was doing creatively. So I found that so interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
that is, because there are stories out there of famous guys who are much younger spending the night with her. Jerry Orbach, the actor, he said years ago before he died, he spent the night with her after working as her limo driver one time back in like the late 50s or something. And then there's a great story Alice Cooper told when him and Keith Moon were in sextet with Mae West.
mhm.
They were gathered at the table. There's Dom DeLuise, Timothy Dalton, Tony Curtis, George Raft, Ringo Starr, all these big names that were in that movie. And May says to Alice, "Hey Alice, why did you turn down my advances earlier?" And Alice says, "Because I'm happily married and you're in your 80s." And like everybody laughed at the table, and then every man at that table proceeds to say, she did, oh, she's hit on me too." And then next thing you know, when you get to Keith Moon at the end of the circle, he just looks away like a little boy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Keith Moon got to spend the night with May. Yeah, I thought that was
Yeah, I mean, she
hilarious.
was definitely, I think, a very free and very sexual person.
Yeah.
But I think she really struck me as a control freak, if
Mm-hmm.
anything. And
Yeah.
I don't think she actually, I think she did say in one of her books, she's like, I do not like to lose control, even in bed.
Yeah. I
And
interviewed
that was,
I interviewed the legendary Playboy interviewer Larry Grobel, and he got to interview May. It was one of his first interviews, and he told me she was flirty, but they didn't have sex. She was in like a happy relationship at that point. But yeah, he's like the only one that I've heard that didn't get to spend the night with her. But yeah, I mean, she had that great line: "I believe in censorship. I made a fortune of it."
yeah. Yeah, I love, and like just her style, her quips, that was so, um, just the double entendres, just
Yeah.
her improvisational ability was so amazing. And I think a lot of it comes from her early on creating this Mae West character and knowing that character inside and out. And so she was just able to instantly capitalize, on any opportunity to play it.
Yeah. So her big break came in 1926. She does the play on Broadway called Sex, which later made into that movie that I just alluded to. And the shit really hits the fan because, the content was controversial and she got in jail for like 10 days, right?
Yeah, and she could have paid a fine, but
Hmm.
she said, I've never been to jail before.
Hmm.
So she went to jail, and it actually, I think, was a very moving experience for her. To get to talk to these women and get a peek into their lives and their story. So, but yeah, I always thought that was so great that she didn't have to go to jail, but she was definitely always open to a new experience.
Yeah, and like while she was in jail, she had dinner with the warden and his wife, and she was let go due to good behavior. What do you think happened?
uh, I think they just wanted to get Mae West out of the jail, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I think that. Okay, so first of all, she didn't have like the full thing. Like she somehow got to have like her special silk under things because
Hmm.
what the regular prison uniforms were made of would irritate her skin.
Yeah.
So she already wasn't really having the real prison experience.
Yeah.
And I think there was just so much hoopla, and I think she was really causing a lot of distraction. And, I think he was just like, can I just get her out of here? He doesn't have to worry about, is anything going to happen to Mae? Like, if he could imagine if anything had happened to her in jail, on his watch. So, yeah, I don't think it was anything bawdy. I just think practically he just, you know,
Yeah,
I think she had played the system too, by
yeah,
going to jail in the first place.
yeah, my mind directs toward the body, but yeah, that's a good point. That could have been what happened, and it's also a great example of where we're at today, where famous people are not being held accountable.
Yeah.
now I know she,
Yeah.
now I know she did Little Diamond, but like, did she get banned from Broadway, and that's why Hollywood came calling?
Um, well, Hollywood, I think she was intrigued with the fact that Hollywood would her performances would be captured on film forever.
Hmm.
She knew that, no matter how great her performances were on Broadway, only a certain number of people could see them. They could only experience them in real time. And then eventually, there's going to be a point where no one's alive that remembers her performing.
Hmm.
And I think that she had no limits in her ambition and the kind of success that she wanted. So she came to Hollywood, and she always said, Hollywood needed me more than I needed Hollywood.
Hmm.
And she did do a lot for Paramount,
Yeah.
box office wise during the short time she was in films.
She was under contract at Paramount. She was probably there at the same time as Francis Farmer and Lou Ayres and people in that era.
Yeah,
Um,
it was really specific. I'm trying to recall the exact years, but it was like early 30s, and it was only just a few years because when they cracked down on censorship, when they really cracked down, she wasn't even able to. She always said, "I write for the censors. I give them enough to take out that I can still have the things that I want in there."
yeah,
Um, but I
yeah.
think it got to a point where she just wasn't going to be able to be Mae West, and that was her first priority was herself. She wrote everything. Nobody else could write for her. And so when it got to a point where that wasn't going to be the case, she was like, I'm done. And
Hmm.
she left movies, but stayed in California.
Yeah. Now she did some early movies with Cary Grant. She done him wrong, and I'm no angel. I grew up crushing on Cary Grant. My mom had a paperback book that had all these beautiful black and white photos of him and stuff, and I've always loved him. Do you know what their relationship was like? Was it respect or dislike?
I think that she claimed she discovered him, but he had been in a couple of movies before that. But she did. I believe the story that she tells is true. I think she did, pick him out on the lot one day, and she said, "I want to hear him talk, and if I like the way he talks, he's in the film." And so that all worked out, and she really helped him in terms of giving him advice on how to play to the camera, how to not get upstage. She always made sure that he had these really really great camera angles, and that he was featured probably more than he would have been
Mm-hmm.
under the circumstances, with him being such a new talent, unproven talent at that point. So I think they had, a really great relationship. And I know Mae says they didn't sleep together because she was in another relationship at the time. So I think it was, very respectful, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even a little bit of mentorship going on there.
And plus, it was well known that Carrie also liked men. He went to Scotty Bowers' gas station a lot. And there were a lot of actors that did not like Cary Grant just because of what he represented. They thought that he played it safe, and he was just a romantic comedy guy. Like Gary Cooper once said that Cary Grant was a crack comedian and didn't pose as competition to him. That's the extent of like what the disdain was.
Yeah, yeah. I just, you know, when people get into competition, it's never a good look on
Mm-hmm.
anyone, you know. Like I think the best thing you can do with competition is just be the best of you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But who is it that said, oh, like Joan Crawford saying she could be a better hooker than Harlow any day of the year?
Oh yeah.
You know, just not a good look for Joan, you know.
Oh, nothing was a good look for Joan.
Yeah, man, what a career.
Yeah, oh yeah. But it is well known that Mae did not like W.C. Fields. In fact, her grandson Ron told me a few years ago a hilarious story that I had to go back and listen to make sure I had it right. Um, he wrote his first book in 1973, and he was scheduled to go on this radio show, and the host told him that Mae was going to be on as well, and he asked if that was okay. Now, he was not aware that Mae hated his grandfather. He did not know that. So he said, absolutely. So the day that he goes to the radio station, he finds out Mae canceled. And he asked the host why. And he said, and I quote, she said, I don't ever want to meet a Fields again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think the story that like what I'm recalling, I think this is correct, is that she, or according to Mae, uh, she didn't drink,
Yeah.
and she didn't like other people to drink. She didn't have any tolerance for drunks, and you know, he drank quite a bit, and I think she kind of took this holier than thou you know, attitude about the whole thing. So she did not
Yeah.
appreciate his drinking. Um, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not sure about so many of these things.
It's
I'm really
okay.
trying to get refreshed.
Well, that's what I
But
do here. I do like minutia of like, maybe this happened, or did you hear about this, that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm just, you know, I feel like I just have so much in my head sometimes. I'm like, it's right, but I believe this is true. When she was signed on to a film with him, she said, you know, I'm not working if he's drunk. If he shows up drunk, I'm going to go home. And she says that happened one time. And then after that, he, quote, behaved himself. So
Mhm.
that's Mae's version. And, you know, we
Yeah.
have to keep that in mind. But
Well, he walked off the set for 2 weeks because him and the director fought constantly. And, I've always heard that when a comedy classic turns out great, it's because there was fighting on set. Usually,
oh, yeah.
when you see a movie that's hilarious, that happened, and then sometimes you see a movie that's not so hilarious and you find out it's because everybody got along.
Yeah, yeah. It's like not enough tension in the room.
Like Young Frankenstein, there was fighting constantly on that movie. Like Wilder didn't get along.
What a great film,
Yeah,
by the way.
Wilder didn't get along with Terry Garr, and Cloris Leachman was fighting with somebody, I heard, but it's a masterpiece in comedy.
Oh my God, that movie, we watch that every Halloween. It's such a masterpiece, I think. Dare I say masterpiece for that film, but I
It
think it
is.
is.
It is. I did a tribute to Gene with his widow this summer because a documentary came out. I recommend it. It's great. It,
Oh yeah, I'll have to check that
it's
out.
really it's
I love
really
that.
sad at the end though when they talk about his final years. It was really really
Mm-hmm.
sad. So you mentioned before, yeah. I mean, she left Hollywood, but then the heat's on. That was her last movie for 27 years, and then she comes back with Myra Breckenridge, which was a notorious disaster, and I still haven't seen it. I found out about it in the '90s. I was watching the Dick Cavett show constantly on VH1. They would show reruns, and I saw the famous Raquel Welch and Janis Joplin one, and like Raquel Welch was talking about it. Janice criticizes the movie. She says it's too choppy and it keeps changing. And then Raquel says, "Well, it's about change." And then Raquel says, "I'll drink to that."
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. And I don't really want to.
Uh huh.
I just I don't know. I think that as she goes on, I think the one mis in my eyes, I
Yeah.
mean, I think not. I don't know if you call it a mistake or not, but she really didn't allow herself to age, and at a certain point, I think she becomes more of a caricature to the public,
Mm-hmm.
and that definitely, I think, put her in the zeitgeist more than she would have been otherwise,
Yeah.
because we're still all talking about her. Most people
Yeah.
know Mae West references, but yeah, I kind of wish she had allowed, and I think maybe I wonder today if she had existed today, um, if she would have been
Canceled.
someone who embraced like being an older sexy woman, but an older sexy woman didn't exist back then, and so she just maintained this like sexy image in this way that to me stopped really working
I
after a
hope.
certain.
I hope she wouldn't have gotten Botox because that's all we see now. Botox everywhere.
I don't know. She has had a very strict health regimen
Mm-hmm.
and exercise regimen, and I think she was ahead of her time in that. Very much like, if people are familiar with Gloria Swanson, and her lifestyle around health was very different and new at that time, but it's stuff we all do now. So I do wonder if she would have done any sort of cosmetic enhancements, because she was so dedicated to, like, I actually have a list here.
Mm-hmm.
She says women can attain beauty by not neglecting the following, and I'm going to read you her list:
Mm-hmm.
health, rest, diet, teeth, exercise, feet, hair, makeup, complexion, personality, and sex appeal.
I like the feet
So that was,
part.
yeah, that was Mae's recipe for, you know, being beautiful, is maintaining all of those aspects of yourself.
I agree. That is wonderful that she had that. I forgot to mention she was also on Mr. Ed.
Oh yeah. I kind of hate the 60s and 70s for just what they did to those really early classic stars. Like it worked for very few people, but a lot
Hmm.
of them, it just was like a bad last act, in
I
terms of the kind of films
I get what you're
that
trying
they
to.
were
Yeah,
asked to be a part of, and some of the show appearances that they did.
I get
Just
what I get what
overall,
you're saying, but they had nowhere to go.
I know. It's like they didn't really have other choices, and that's what the industry was
Yeah.
at that point. And I just hate it for them because it just, pulls some of the shimmer off for me sometimes. That's one
Pat
reason I don't want to watch Myra Breckenridge.
Pat O'Brien was Grandpa Cunningham on Happy Days.
Yeah, you're just like, but
Yeah.
people, we can't expect people to stay in certain roles and characters for their whole career either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart became a personality. He had his own show that didn't last. But he continued working. He always worked.
yeah. And at the end of the day, what else do you want people to do? If you're in any other career, you just keep working. You
Hmm.
don't hit your peak and then just stop. And most people can. So,
Yeah. So what's your favorite May movie?
um, okay, so I mixed them up because they're all so similar. So I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I get this right. I want to say I'm No Angel.
Hmm.
It was at TC. It's where she says, "Come up sometime and see me."
Yeah.
It's that movie, and um, it's I saw it last year at TCM, and it was the best experience, just in a room full of people who love classic film, love Mae West, get what they're about to watch, and just like reveling in her one-liners and just all the kind of extra ridiculous little things that happen in these Mae West movies. But that movie is just so quintessentially Mae West, because all of them are kind of the same, in that
Yeah.
she's playing the same character, and you have the same types of characters kind of moving around in the story.
Yeah.
But I can't get enough of it, so I love it.
I'm going to be interviewing one of the guys that goes into the gay bar in Police Academy next week.
Uh
And
huh.
when they first go in there and that song is playing, you hear the guy go, "Hey, big boy, why don't you come up and see me sometime?" It became
That's
like
such a great line.
it became a big part of the culture, that catchphrase that she had. And
Yeah, and
yeah,
um, most people say it wrong, and I actually saw it on a shirt, and I was like, I really want to buy the shirt, but the shirt was um, what most people say, where it's like flipped.
mm-hmm.
She says, come up sometime and see
Yeah,
me. And it was like,
yes,
come up and see me sometime. And I was like, but that's not what she really said, so I can't buy the shirt.
yeah. A hard man is good to find, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, we owe so much to Mae West as a culture.
yeah. I love She Done Him Wrong. I love My Chickadee. I love Sextet with all the 70s campiness.
Hmm.
Those are three classics, though, but they're all great. She almost refused to be on the cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album. She said, what would I be doing in a Lonely Hearts Club band?
Yeah, yeah. She was so protective of her image.
Yeah. Yeah, and like her figure was the inspiration for the Coke bottle. That's so bizarre, but it also makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, and she totally had that, to me, that very Victorian kind of look. Like
Hmm.
she liked that kind of fashion and style, and it suited her body, and I loved her just going with that.
Yeah. In addition to May, what are some of the other old Hollywood stars you love?
Oh wow. I love Jean Harlow.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ava Gardner, Carol Lombard, um, Gloria Swanson. I think I mentioned her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jean Tierney is really interesting to me. Clara Bow,
Yeah,
um, Mary Astor. Just her whole story is really crazy.
she's underrated for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, and her. I don't know if you've read the Purple Diaries. It's
No, not yet.
an account of um, her trial, where her husband stole her personal diaries and tried to blackmail her with them for custody of their child, and she said no, and so he like started leaking parts of her diaries to the press.
Oh,
Anyway, it's super fascinating if anybody's into real life scandals like that. But yeah, Mary Astor, wild story.
Gl- Glenn.
But yeah, I kind
Mm.
of get enamored of different people, and then like kind of get into it and learn all about them. People catch my attention, at different times. But it's been a really fun way to learn about classic Hollywood.
Exactly. I love Jimmy Stewart and everything he was in. I love Audrey Hepburn, Natalie
Oh yeah, I
Wood.
just realized I named only women. Sorry, dudes. But I love Clark Gable. I always call him my boyfriend.
Yeah.
He's my man. And then George Raft is really interesting to me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I like the guys too, but the
Yeah.
women just had such fascinating careers, because
They were. Yeah.
it was a lot more complicated to be a woman back then, I think, in the
Yeah.
film industry.
And so many strong women pulled through, like Katharine Hepburn and Betty Davis.
Hmm. Yeah,
And Lauren
yeah.
Bacall. I love the movies that her and Bogey did. I just loved them. I love The Big Sleep. It's one of my favorite noirs ever. I love Dark Passage because it was shot in San Francisco, where I'm from. Um, Jimmy Cagney. I love Marie Windsor. I
Oh yeah.
I did an interview with Ileana Douglas earlier this year, and I was so nervous I forgot to tell her that I consider her the modern Marie Windsor because they're both so quirky and they got dark features. They have like a similar look and similar roles they play, where they can play anything, femme fatales, girl Fridays, anything,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, those are all my favorites and stuff. But I even love the stuff that people with my kind of politics wouldn't like today, like John Wayne. There's a lot of John Wayne stuff I like.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you know, who cares about,
I
like, if
know.
politics isn't that big of a thing,
It's
that you
it.
can't enjoy this, you can't
Yeah.
enjoy things, that people did. But yeah,
Yeah.
I was telling my husband, when I watch a classic movie, it just relaxes me in a way that modern movies don't. Like, it's
Yeah.
just comforting to me. The the stories are so good. I think the studio system of way of making films was, it had its bad points, but it
Yeah.
produced really great product. And the it was a little more creative to me with the
Oh yeah.
lack, with them having the boundaries around, profanity or sexuality,
Hmm.
um, or crime. They really had to get creative to tell stories and stay within those boundaries, and that's really interesting. I think that makes some of them maybe more interesting than they otherwise would have been.
Exactly, exactly. It was a creative time, and it wasn't all good. There was a lot of crap in those days because what would happen is if movies hit the box office, the studio would take some money from that gross and do a tax write off movie, just so they could throw it away, as a tax write off. But then sometimes that movie would hit and it actually turned out better than people expected, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how Columbia and Universal were B movie studios at one point.
Oh, I know. It's wild how they
They run
have had
Hollywood
these
now.
miracle stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they run Hollywood now. But back then, Louis B. Mayer would tell Clark Gable, "If you're not nice to me, I'll put you in a Universal movie next."
Yeah. And he's like, fine, I'll win an Oscar in
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Do you have any plans of like writing a book about your old Hollywood interests?
you know, I I really want to, and I don't know why I'm sitting on it. But yes, I'd really like to turn my tour into a book because there's so many little bits and pieces and interesting places and things. I can't do everything in a tour, but I feel like I want that information to be out there for people. And especially as things change, and our landscape is changing, and some of the places on my tour might not exist
Huh.
in 20 years, who knows. But yeah, I actually thank you for putting that back into my consciousness.
Yeah.
Because that's something I've always thought about and wanted to do, and I just don't know why I'm not pulling the trigger on it.
Yeah, because people have been telling me for years that I should write books about what I love of all movies and stuff, and it's just like so many people have written books about things I like, and like I like a lot of obscure stuff too that I don't think a lot of people would care about, and plus it's a lot of work to interview people on the podcast already, but to get them to cooperate for a book and get licensing and crap, it's a lot of work. But what I would love to do is write trivia books because I used to be a trivia champion in my local
Oh,
bars.
that would be a great. That's such
Yeah,
a great idea, and it probably sell really well too.
I yeah, I mean trivia books are getting popular, especially in the horror genre now, and they have those and stuff. I would like to do that. I did write my own like a trivia book about my favorite band, the Bangles. I don't know if I'll ever publish it, but it was like a training ground. I taught myself how to do a trivia book that way.
Oh my gosh, if you've written it, you need to put it out there.
We'll see. We'll see. They have a documentary coming out next year, so maybe if that gives them,
Perfect timing.
yeah, maybe if that gives them a resurgence, maybe I'll just contact their people and ask permission and do it.
Hmm.
So how often do the tours like happen? How often do you do them monthly or something?
Just whenever people call,
Oh,
we get it on the calendar, and yeah, I've never gone back to having a regularly scheduled one since I had to stop during COVID. But I've really enjoyed doing the smaller private groups, and I still do big. People will call and book like a large group, and I still enjoy that. And I'll have two or three public ones coming up in April during the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival.
yeah. And do you ever do the oh God, where is it at? Oh, Palm Springs Old Hollywood Film Festival. Is it that one you're talking?
I haven't made it out to that, but I think as my daughter gets older, that's something I'd really love to do. I've only been to Palm Springs once, and I didn't get to do very much. So that there's so much interesting Hollywood history there that I think that could be a fun week.
Yeah, yeah. Because I had what's his name who does it, Alan Rhodey, on here a few years ago.
Yeah.
That guy's a character, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So great. So great.
So real quick, we got to play my secret silly game. This is a series of silly slumber party questions. It's no win or lose. It's just pure fun. And
Hmm.
how it works, April, is I ask you the question, you answer it, then you ask me that exact same question, and I answer it. And feel free to comment on the answers because they might be funny.
Okay.
April, are you ticklish?
Yes. Are you ticklish?
Oh yes, but if you tickle me without warning, I might hit you in the groin.
Same. I don't like it. I don't like being ticklish.
I like it when it's pleasurable. If I know it's going to happen, that's fine. But if you do it without warning, I may just get a herky jerky reflex and hit you.
I'll keep that in mind.
Is your belly button an innie or an outie?
Any is your belly button an innie or an outie?
It is an innie, and I love the way you pronounce belly button. It's very southern.
Oh yeah. Okay, outie is kind of like they don't weird me out to see. They just weird me out to think about me having one. Like
I've interviewed a
I'm
lot
like,
of
oh my
yeah
God, I wouldn't, no one could touch it. It would just be so sensitive. That just
yeah.
kind of freaks me out. But maybe it's not like that. I don't know.
I
I
inter-
haven't any.
I interviewed a lot of women with outies this year. It's crazy. This is probably the most outie year I've had. A couple years
That's
ago,
so weird. I feel like I never see anyone with an outie. Not like I see a lot of belly buttons, I guess, but
oh, I have. A lot of the actresses and public figures I'm friends with, they post bikini pics or whatever in the summertime, and I can see. But I talked to this one actress a couple of years ago. She didn't want to answer it, so she responded like Mae. She said, "Why don't you come over here and find out?" I was like, "Oh,
now we're all really curious.
I'll send you the link to that episode."
Yeah.
Um, what color are your toenails painted?
Red. What
Love
are
it.
your toenails painted? What color are those
They
painted?
are red, green, and white for Christmas.
Oh, fun!
Yep.
Fun. Yeah. So my daughter is 7, and whenever I don't do this a lot, but every now and then
Hmm.
I'll do a pedicure for her,
Yeah.
and she paints everyone a different color and lines them up in rainbow order.
Love it, love it. Yeah, I've been painting them since I was 13, and I like to go elaborate. And I do the holidays. I did orange and black for Halloween. I did brown for Thanksgiving, and now here's this.
Very festive.
It is. It'll probably be silver or in gold for New Year's. So,
Oh, I love it.
um, what would you say is your best personality trait?
Oh, I think I'm really friendly.
You are.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your best personality trait?
I have empathy and I have no filter.
Two great ones.
Yes, I'm a Gemini.
Me too.
Oh, really? I'm June 6th.
Yes. I'm May 28th.
Okay, you're just 2 days after an ex of mine. She was May 26th.
Oh, really? Is that still? Oh, yeah. I guess it's like the 22nd is when it switches to Gemini.
Yes, the 22nd. If you could have anything named after you, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Anything named after me?
Hmm.
Hmm. Oh, that's hard. I would maybe, okay, this is boring, but maybe like like a classic building, like a really
Okay.
cool old building.
Okay.
If you could have anything named after you, what would it be?
Okay, I'm gonna go body here. A vibrator.
That would be quite a thing to tell people.
I've told a lot of people. I'd call it the Tommy Chatsy.
I don't know. I'm like, I don't know, like a scholarship, like a building. I don't know,
Yeah, maybe
a
like an
festival.
old Hollywood museum.
Yeah, something. I don't know. Maybe, or maybe like I don't. I'm gonna have to think about that. If I think of a really good answer, I'm gonna have to message you. It's like changed it.
And then my favorite question is: there a stinky smell that just makes you gag?
Oh, a stinky smell that makes me gag. I'm pretty smell tolerant.
Mm,
But going into a public bathroom after somebody's just been in there
yeah.
is, or you know what, this is it.
Hmm.
Anytime I have to use like a portalet or a porta potty
Yeah.
or something like that, like I just take a deep breath before I even walk in and just try not to breathe.
I gotta say, I used to be a bouncer in a bar. I had to clean the women's room a few times. I gotta say,
Ugh,
the men's room was cleaner compared to the women's room.
ugh. Yes, a lot goes on in there.
Yeah.
Rough. It's rough. And I had a kid and changed diapers and all that, so I got, immune to some smells, but just the porta potty, like such a terrible, such a terrible thing.
And then for me, I would,
Oh yeah, what
yeah,
smell? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's
I'm
okay.
like zoned out. Okay, so what smell makes you gag?
Either farts or feet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now people with
Oh, there's
kids,
so many different kinds of fart smells.
people with kids are used to it. I know that, but like I'm half Italian on my mom's side, and like even the littlest things like trigger us.
Yeah, feet can be pretty. Body odor's bad. Man, there's a lot of bad smells.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, April, I thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and keep on spreading that Southern hospitality everywhere you go. And let's connect on social media and keep up to date with what we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. Be safe out there.
All right. Thanks. You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye. Well, there you have it. April Clemmer. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh my God, she is one of the many queens of Southern hospitality I have had on this show, and I enjoyed every minute of talking to her and deep diving on the life and career of Mae West. It was fantastic. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes!